can we remind officers and the external representatives to switch their mics and cameras off until asked to speak or present, and to switch them back off again once they have spoken. On to the agenda, item number 1, apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Brent Carter.
And it's also Councillor David Isaac as well, Chair.
David Isaac.
And you said Sherelle will be arriving late, is that right?
Right, and I can inform the meeting now, rather than later, that one of our members, Paul Jones, has decided to step down from this committee. So obviously, you know, following this meeting, Saif and myself and Sue can have a chat regarding advertising the replacement, but we leave that to Saif. Number 2 is declaration of interest. Okay, and on to then item number 3, which is the item on additional learning needs and outreach support across the authority. Okay, and I'm assuming then that Jill, you were going to take us through the report?
I am. Yes, Jill and Rihanna are going to take us through this report. But before we start the report, I would like to inform Scrutiny that on Friday, following the interview process, we have secured a head of access of for the additional learning needs and inclusion post. There's been a number of conversations going on about capacity and the need for a new post within the learning department. So on Friday, we interviewed 5 very good candidates and we've secured the post, secured somebody to the post, and hopefully they will be able to start by August. So ready for the new academic year, we'll have a head of ALN and inclusion.
Okay, thank you very much. So, without further ado, we hand over then to Jill and Rhiannon.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to come along to the Scrutiny Committee. I'm going to start, I'm not going to read the report out, obviously you've all read the report, but I'm just going to sort of talk about a few of the key messages. And the first one is that local authority, Merthyr Tydfil local authority, is in a very good position for the preparation for the reform. We've had a regional approach in producing all sorts of resources, PowerPoints, self-evaluation frameworks, and one version of the truth. That's the way Liz Jones describes it. I'm sure you've all met Liz Jones. This has been created over the last 3 years, and local authority ALN team have been well represented on the task and finish groups in creating the resources to allow our schools to move forward and be well placed to meet the demands of the ALNet Act. We don't want our Elencos to feel overwhelmed, and that is the message to you this afternoon. What we do know is that we haven't gained ground due to COVID, but we haven't lost ground either. And I think that's very, very important to realise that in taking our Elencos forward and leading our schools, we realise now that it is a strategic role. It's a statutory role as an Elenco. All schools now have Elencos in place. And what we've offered in Merthyr and been able to do very successfully is a professional learning offer. And 100% of schools have bought into that. are part of that professional learning platform via the Elenco Forum. Now, the Elenco Forum has always been in place, but now it really has proven to be the vehicle for transformation in Merthyr. We were told last week in a regional meeting that we were unique. Well, we know that in Merthyr, but Liz Jones meant that we're unique in the way we've approached the professional learning. We've included all our early years leaders, 100% of schools, and the Further Education College, Merthyr College, and all the educational psychology service professionals as well. So in many ways, though it seems strange, COVID has helped us because we've had to conduct all our training, deliver all our training via Teams, and we've been having over 50 people attending the Elenco Forum, and particularly the important thing here is 100% of schools. So that's where we are with the Elenco Forum. It's been particularly successful in the sense that we've had buy-in, but the way we're working it is that we've appointed cluster leads. So each cluster has a lead, an Elenco lead. They then work with their clusters and then report back as a group. It's a very important role. It's a very good role for professional development for any Elenco, this role. And we've been focusing over the last 3 years in Merthyr has been really way forward with person-centred practice. Was rolled out across all Merthyr schools 3 years ago. Now, Rhiannon Stevens-Davis, who's the head teacher at Greenfield, is well versed in person-centred practice. And I have to say that this training really has become embedded in Merthyr. So the Elenco Forum and the work with the IDPs has really been based on all those principles. So the first thing we've started this year is the definition, getting the definition of ALN understood, rationalising our ALN registers, and deciding who has additional learning needs. And that is the key decision for all schools, because we're talking about children who do they have additional learning needs because they need additional learning provision, which is in addition to and different from and their usual universal provision within the school. So we're actually talking about school improvement here. And I have attached to the presentation a document which is all about how the ALN reform fits in with the general reform, educational reforms in Wales at the moment. We've developed the work with IDPs, and in this work we've also been able to assign a role to a very experienced Elenco to quality assure. So we've taken on an Elenco secondment for 2 days a week it will be for 3 terms in all. This person is key to the process because not only are they quality assuring the process, and this is someone who is working daily in school, 2 days a week she works for local authority as supporting the professional learning, but she's also able to offer bespoke individual school support. And I think that is key because when Elencos now are starting the work with IDPs, it is very much a step-by-step practice, review, improve, develop, and then move that forward so that we've got a clear understanding across every single school in Merthyr on what makes a quality IDP. What we have found is that Elencos have come back to us and said, we actually need a little bit more practice on person-centred tools. We've got some new staff in school who haven't had this training. So we've been offering 1 hour bite-sized chunk training this term on person-centred tools and also person-centred reviews. So we've responded to the need of Elencos, what they're telling us that we need. And I think that's been the success of it. In February, we looked at provision management, and in March, we decided as schools that we needed to recalibrate. We've had a year of very disrupted education in Merthyr in the sense of moving IDPs forward. So we've all the Elencos have submitted a school readiness survey and a PCP audit, really to identify the roadmap now for as we move forward in the autumn term. But I think it is good to stop and just address where we are and how we can support people moving forward. So it's a very carefully planned progression. As we know, in September, the Minister has informed us, and I've put the information into the report as to what, where we are with the LNET Act in September and who we address. We don't change statements from September, but we will be looking at individual development plans rolling out for certain year groups. So that's all there for you. The other thing that we've done is we've met our statutory duties in the sense that we've appointed as well an early years ALN lead officer, and she's going to be establishing collaborative working practices and making sure that there is a really carefully planned transition and successful transitions into schools for our preschool children. If I move on just to the fact that we are now working with Bridgend, who are going to use our cluster model and want to work with us, because our model has been seen as a very positive way of moving forward. The role of the local authority is going to be key, and I think our team in the ALN team, we're building capacity, we've recruited new roles, but what the key message is, I think, for you, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions to ask, is that the role of the Elenco is a strategic role. It's a statutory role. It's a strategic role. ALN is everybody's business. It's not an operational role. So ALNCos are not expected to be writing IDPs in school. They are there to provide guidance and support. And what we have done this term is made sure that all our Elencos have a pathway of training for their schools, for all their staff in schools, to roll out very carefully over the summer term in preparation for September. We're also working with head teachers. We've got a meeting with head teachers in a couple of weeks' time, when all their questions then will be answered by local authority officers, and Liz Jones, who's the transformation lead as well. So I think I've just about come to the end of my few minutes of talking to you. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, and I'd like to hand over now to Rhiannon Stevens-Davis, who is just going to talk you through our outreach support from Greenfield School.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon. So last academic year, Sue met with myself and we discussed giving outreach support to the LRBs across Merthyr, the learning resource bases. And we put a model together and we started in September. So it wasn't the best time to start a new project because of COVID. But I'm really pleased to say that it has started and it's been going really well despite everything. So what is outreach? It's basically where we have teachers from Greenfield going out to support the teachers in the LRBs and sharing their expertise. Because in Greenfield, we have got really experienced teachers who are very skilled in various different areas of ALN. So this time last summer, we did identify 3 of our teachers who would do the outreach support, and that was part of a selection process. And each of them have different areas of expertise. For example, one of them is really experienced and real expert in working with children who have autistic spectrum disorders. Another one is very good with foundation phase. The other teacher is very, very good with using technologies. They've all got very different skill sets. And as part of doing that role, they have become middle leaders and are being paid a TLR. The model is based on a time allocation model. So each LRB has a certain number of days allocated to them, and that's based on their size. And the teachers who are doing the outreach work are being given supervision and support by the senior leaders in Greenfield, so myself and the deputy heads, and that's to support them within that role. We're using a coaching model, so all of the outreach teachers have had training in coaching using the GROW model. So there are lots of advantages to this model, this outreach model that we've developed. The advantages for local authority are that it provides quality assurance from experienced professionals working within the field. And it's a peer support model, so it's school to school working. So our teachers, you know, they are doing the work day to day, so they can model and show how to perhaps implement certain teaching approaches. And it means that the knowledge and skill set is current, and in Greenfield we are very innovative and we use the latest approaches. But we also invite the LRB teachers to come into Greenfield to come and observe good practice here. So what we are hoping, what we haven't managed to do just yet, is to do joint training, so that's, you know, can reduce cost of training. The advantages for us as a school have been that it's been a really good opportunity to develop our teachers' skills, and it's also been an opportunity for career progression, so it's developed our middle leader tier, and it's an opportunity to develop those relationships and working together. So it means that our teachers are getting to know the children in the LRBs, and perhaps where a child might need to come to Greenfield, that can be identified early. But what we're really hoping long term is that through this better working and closer working relationship, that perhaps children who are in Greenfield, there may be an easier transition back to an LRB and possibly back to mainstream. So that's the model. We started it in September, and it's been a flexible approach. So our outreach teachers have been going into the LRBs, and that's been through some creative timetabling. So what we've done is we've made sure that our teachers, on the day that they do the outreach, they have their planning and preparation time as well. So our teachers have been going out to the LRBs in the morning, and then they've been working from home in the afternoon doing their planning preparation time, which has meant that they haven't had to go into 2 schools in one day. So we've been really creative to get around the COVID barriers to get this up and running. And we have been developing really good relationships with the teachers in the LRBs. Some of the LRBs haven't wanted face-to-face meetings, so where that has happened, we've done it virtually via Teams. And we've been working on a number of things. One of the things has been to work on the moderation project, and we've been embedding a new assessment tool called B², which we've been using in Greenfield for a number of years. So it means again that the assessments we're using in the LRBs and in Greenfield, they're consistent across the authority. Other things we've been supporting the LRBs with is how to do blended and distance learning with children who have additional learning needs, and that's been a real challenge for all children, but certainly children who have got learning difficulties. You know, distance learning and doing it online via Teams is a real challenge, but we have done a really good job, and children have engaged really well. All the LRBs have now been provided with Iris Connect. So Iris is a video-enabled professional learning platform. So what that basically means is that when you're teaching, you can video yourself teaching, and then as a teacher, you can decide which part of your lesson and which part of your teaching you want to share with a colleague, and then you reflect on your own practice. It's certainly not a video in your classroom to monitor what you're doing. It's very much for you as a teacher to be able to reflect back and discuss with your colleagues your practice. So what we're really hoping is that Iris will help us to work together with the teachers in the LRBs, and we can sit down and look at the videos and look at particular teaching strategies and improve teaching and learning through those means. And it's really timely having Iris. It's a good way of working, especially when it's difficult to have people going into your classroom, because what you don't want is too many people in and out of classes because of COVID at the moment. But what we're hoping is that in future that we can use IRIS to share good practice and reflect on practice, not just between Greenfield and the LRBs, but with other special schools across Wales. Okay. Jill, I think that's as far as I got. We're working through the report, so Jill's just going to take you through 5.2.4 for a few points, and then it'll be back to me in a moment. Thank you.
I think I was gold fishing then, wasn't I? My mouth was moving and no sound was coming out. Do that quite a lot at the moment. I think I can take you through the sections which will just show that the work supporting the LRBs from the ALN team has continued, and the virtually, albeit virtually. So there have been quite a number of support sessions for LRB teachers with excellent attendance rates. The annual InStep audit has been undertaken during the autumn term, and the results are all there in front of you for you to see. The InStep is based on the old curriculum. We are now moving to B squared, which is a much more effective assessment for us. It's electronic, and you know there is an awful lot we can do with B squared. It's an online assessment system, and it allows data to be collated centrally, which is going to be quite an important part for the local authority, because in our role and our new duty under the Act, we have to be able to make a judgment on the quality of our provisions in the local authority. So it will allow us to interrogate data and look at progress of pupils and look at the impact of the provision, which is the most important thing. I think obviously the data is showing that some children haven't made the progress that maybe would have been expected. There has been a small decrease, but this mirrors actually what teachers are reporting across all mainstream schools as well. There is an awful lot of work that has gone out in addition to the work with the LRBs. Our statement monitoring work has been very rigorous, and we've produced a report and also some case studies on some really interesting work in how pupils with statements have been supported during the lockdowns, the recent lockdowns, and it makes really interesting reading. As far as going forwards, one of the things that I would like to comment on what Rhiannon was saying is the work in Merthyr is very much school-led professional learning and peer-to-peer support. There is some excellent practice in Merthyr schools, and I think this is what we're seeing. We're getting a really good grasp of ALN provision in our schools. Quite naturally, some schools have strengths, and those strengths and areas of excellent practice we're finding out about. We can share that then across the professional learning platforms. So I think that is, and the other thing is building capacity within the ALN team. We are also appointing an additional IDP officer, and that advert will be going out hopefully the next couple of weeks. So I think we are placed in a very, very good place in meeting the requirements of the Act, most certainly. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jill and Rhiannon. Excellent presentation. And in fairness, going through the report prior to the meeting, that's all I can say on behalf of the committee is it's one excellent report. And I think members will bring this out during the questions, because I'm sure that members have got a few questions to ask. But once again, thank you for the presentation. What was and is an excellent report. So over to members now for questions first.
Hello, this is Kath Phelan.
Hello, Kath.
Hi. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. I must echo what the chair has just said. The question that I'd really like to ask is about training. It's very obvious that training has been directed to Elenkos. What I want to know is how is that being cascaded to other members of staff?
Yeah.
Not the way in which we're doing it by team meetings, for example, but how is it actually being able to be used within the classroom situation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the way we're working with our Elenkos is that they're the pathfinders, and they have been working with their cluster leads, and they will go back to their schools and they will deliver a very carefully planned session of staff meetings. Not great long staff meetings, that's not what anybody wants at the moment, but certainly we are copying the model of the way we've delivered the Elenco Forum since October. So we planned this out with them because they asked us to do that. Elenco said to us, come on now, show us, how do you want us to roll this out back in school? And we said, well, first of all, you need to go through and make sure that your staff understand what additional learning need actually means and what is universal provision. Because I think there are quite a lot of people in schools who still think that a child has additional learning need because they are doing some catch-up work on a reading scheme. Now, that isn't, we wouldn't class that as an additional learning need. We would say that was universal. That is part of a child's development. It's part of what they should access as part of a quality teaching and learning environment, is that some children will need catch-up reading. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've got additional learning needs. It may be that they have just taken their time to learn their reading. So that's the first step for Elenkos, to get into their schools and to get those conversations going on in school. Following that, then they need to look at their ALN registers, because do they want to be writing IDPs for 40% of children in their schools? No, they don't. And they won't need to, because those children will have carefully planned differentiated learning, but they will probably not have additional learning needs. They will have access to good quality, universal provision of teaching and learning. So once we get to the children who do have additional learning needs, then those Elenkos, so that conversation is a professional conversation that will go on in school, and they're all ready for that. And if there's anybody who isn't ready for it, we have a seconded Elenco who will give bespoke support. And we've already had an Elenco who's approached her and said, I'm going to need some help with this. And you know what? We've got a culture in Merthyr where Elenkos can say that, and say that without feeling this is overwhelming, I can't manage this. You know, so if they really are finding aspects of this a little bit confusing or a bit difficult, then we've got an Elenco who's been seconded, who is there to offer bespoke training and support for that Elenco in school to deliver that back in their setting. So the work with the IDPs is going to be a process over the summer term. And a lot of this is back from the Elenkos themselves have recognised that we do need a little bit more work done on person-centred outcomes. Because sometimes when we put outcomes, we put them from school's point of view. We're not actually writing them for the child. We're actually writing them from what we want as teachers, you know. Now, are we saying that we want a child to get to green books in the reading scheme? Or are we saying we want the child to be able to read a story, their favourite story, with their sister, brother or sister? It's about identifying what, you know, that outcome and making sure it's right for that child. So I know I am going on a little bit here, but the feeling with all of this and the way we're going forward is that we are equipping our Elenkos to be prepared to roll out training. ultimately, the message has to be that ALN is everybody's business. It's not just the Alenkos. It belongs to every single teacher in that school. It's part of school improvement and part of the learning. I know I'm going on, Kath, but perhaps I'm talking too much now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, because it's good to see that you're actually getting down to the nitty-gritty and that this isn't just hypothesis.
No.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members with questions?
Good afternoon. Can you see me, Harvey?
Yeah, we can see you, Cheryl.
Apologies for my lateness. I was stuck in another meeting. I've got a few questions, Chair, if that's okay. So, yeah. in terms of moving forward, the PCP, the Child's Review, will only be for children who've been identified with ALN. With additional learning needs. Yeah. Their IDP review. Yeah. Right. Okay. So your normal speech and language and communication delays from preschool, they wouldn't hit that sort of level in terms of on that graduated response for the child review to be undertaken for an IDP. Yeah. So what it would be, Cheryl, is it would. I suppose you have to decide whether that is part of the child's developmental delay or whether it's additional learning needs. Right. Preschool child, we could be talking about a child who's just slow at talking, but actually hasn't got any additional learning needs. And it's a similar situation with maybe a child who has a diagnosis of something, so say ASD. They may have a diagnosis of ASD, but they may not have additional learning needs. It's all about the barrier to learning. Mm-hmm. So if a child has a barrier to learning and needs something in addition to, needs provision that is in addition to and different from what all the other children are having in that setting, then they would be identified as having ALN. So if that speech, what you were using, speech and language, weren't you? If that speech and language was really having an impact on their ability to access their learning, it would be identified as an additional learning need. But it may just be a developmental delay, which would be addressed with the appropriate speech and language input, really, therapy. Okay. So as part of the work that you're doing around ALN, have you produced like a provision mapping of what's available in preschools, what's available? So is that available to share with us to see exactly what provision we've got across the spectrum, really, in order to support families, and in order for practitioners to know what is out there available to support children in schools and preschool? Yeah, well, each school and each setting will be developing their own provision map, because different schools have a different provision, if you like, to meet the needs of their pupils. So, for example, if a school has a particular provision, then that will be part of their provision management. What we do say is that there are lots of interventions that schools use in schools, and that should be available for schools, and we would encourage schools to share that via their website so that parents understand exactly what is available. It may be an intervention. So if your child is having an issue with reading or maths, they may have a particular intervention in that school. So that would be the route for that child. As part of the universal provision within the school. It wouldn't necessarily mean if a child was having difficulty in maths that they would have additional learning needs. Does that make sense? Yeah, so, yeah, definitely. Okay, fab. That's really useful. Thank you. Going back to what Kath was saying about training, obviously with the Act coming in, there's a huge amount of different training surrounding the Act. I think it's a total of 8 modules, but 7 are available at the moment. And, it is important that information is disseminated across our schools, childcare practitioners, etc. One thing that I've found out more recently is that apparently there's lots of the interactive training available on the hub under ALN. But the problem is for non-maintained or maintained nursery settings and preschool providers is that they haven't got access to hub. So I just thought it was something that might be worthwhile raising here to see whether or not there could be an extension to the use of hub to roll out the ALN training delivery and, you know, more information around the whole agenda, really, in terms of childcare practitioners and schools, like I said, non-maintained and maintained settings that haven't got access to that. My final question was with regards to the outreach programme commissioned by Greenfield School. It sounds like it's really good and it's working really well, and the LRBs are getting a lot out of it. You can see the benefits for the LRBs with the peer-to-peer and the support that they provide in. My question was, are there members of staff that are being released from Greenfield School coming out of their classrooms to provide the additionality to the LRBs, and in which case are they being backfilled, or have these staff been identified in addition to the staff in the school? Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
I made that
question.
Clear.
And this is something that we had to discuss at length with our governors, because of course our governors want to make sure that the needs of Greenfield come first. So these are very experienced class teachers who are coming out of class. Right. And because we decided in the end, we were looking to select 2 of our staff, but we ended up selecting 3, and I think that because they were also amazing at the interview, but that's actually worked out well, because it means that we've divided the LRBs between them, and it means that the commitment is half a day a week for each of them. So, and then with their planning and preparation time for that work and their general PPA time, that's another half day. So it takes them out of class for a day, and it's being backfilled with really experienced HLTAs. And so part of our existing core staff, so it's not supply coming in. We had a long discussion. We didn't want supply staff going in because we wanted that consistency and people with a high skill level, so that the children in the classes where the teachers are leaving to go and do the outreach work are not at a disadvantage because of it. But I do think that although our teachers are leaving their class that half day, it's been really good for their professional development. So it's that peer-to-peer work. So they are sharing their skills in specialist strategies for children with quite complex needs. But it's been really good for them going out to mainstream schools and seeing what goes on in the mainstream world. So I think it's going to be a real advantage for both us and the LRBs. So we're really excited about it, and we're really pleased about how it's going. One thing I didn't mention in the presentation was that a really good indicator of how well this is going is that in the moderation, this is where samples of work are sent into a moderation session where staff have levelled work. It's to make sure there's consistency around how staff assess and level work. This time round, all the LRBs apart from one submitted work, so that's a big increase, but also the approval rate has increased from 44% to 64%. So there's been real progress there, and it was the teachers from the LRBs who did the work. It wasn't done for them by the outreach teachers. So really pleased to see that. So that's some real, hard data there to show, the impact of the work that's been done.
Definitely. Oh, that's brilliant, and that's really reassuring, because from the report, I could clearly see that it's working, and that commissioning approach is the right approach. But I was just really conscious about the consistency for our students who were in a classroom where, if they had, I didn't know if it was one teacher removed for half of the week, and then it's like, how do you balance that? But I'm glad you're giving us around to it as well. No, that's excellent. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? If not, I've got two short questions to Jill and Rhiannon, and I'm quoting, ladies, from the presentation that's attached to your report. And it's the sheet where it talks of the statutory duties for maintained schools. And bullet point 4 on that particular sheet says the following: provide information to children, parents and carers about the new ALN system. Now, my question here is, when do you envisage that schools will embark on this particular process?
That's an excellent question. I knew that was going to come, Councillor Jones. What's going to happen is that we've got a regional agreement on when we're going to flood the whole of Wales with our ALN information, mainly because it's a dual system. So at the moment it is complex. If we put information out too early, we will create utter confusion, and that's the last thing we want to do. So we're looking at towards the end of May, middle to end of May, when all our websites are all up and running and ours is almost ready to go. We will put out all the information on the websites, and the schools will be able to do the same. So it will be communicated all together as a regional approach then. And there's some really good information that's been produced, and animations and all sorts of things that will really support parents and carers and children and young people as well.
Thank you very much for that, Jill. And my second question, and you've already touched on it, and that's the B-squared assessment.
Yeah.
Because within the report, at paragraph 527 and 7.5, you mention B-squared. And in 527, what you say, in-step assessment is being replaced by B-squared assessment across all LRBs. And then in 7.5, we are talking about support LRB staff to complete baseline assessments and embed the new assessment tool B-squared. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what you provided us with on the initial introduction to this new concept?
Okay, so the B-squared assessment is something that we've been using in Greenfield for a number of years, and many other special schools use it, and specialist provisions such as LRBs. So it's not a new assessment, it's very well known. The reason that we like using it is because it breaks down skills into very, very small parts. So for a child who has quite complex needs, showing progress with many other assessments is quite difficult, but with B-squared you can really show progress, which is in small steps, very nicely. So it's a nice thing to be able to feed back to parents, but also as a class teacher it helps to break down all the skills into really small parts. So it helps you to know, what do I need to be working on next? So quite often the assessment will help to inform what I need to plan and what I need to do with that child next to really make sure they're going to progress and make progress. So the B Squared has been purchased for the LRBs and it's all set up. They've had the training, and the teachers are now in the process of, as stated in 7.5, they're baselining now. So what that means is that they're going through the assessment for each individual child to see exactly where they're at. So it takes a bit of time to baseline. So the outreach teachers have been supporting the LRB teachers to do this. So they're working with them. So that is all underway and going well as far as I know. So we'll be in a position where hopefully very soon all the children will be baselined, and then we can start to show progress as we move forward towards the end of this term and into next term. So that B Squared information will follow the child. So if a child came to us, then they're already baselined. We know exactly where they're at. In a way, we're talking the same assessment language then, with using the same assessment tool.
And I think, can I just add to that, Rhiannon, as well, is that the local authority has that duty, that new statutory duty of keeping ALP under review. And, you know, this is in the presentation, that we need to have effective systems for monitoring progress of pupils, particularly in LRBs. We need to know that that provision is is providing that additionality, and that the children are making progress at whatever level they may be. But we need to see that to show that we are getting, you know, that there's value for money, that those children are in that provision and are making progress. And I think that's what B Squared will do, very much so for the local authority. We will put an online system. We'll be able to, I think we're going to become quite adept at collating information like this. And I know that as Sue alluded to earlier, that the gentleman who's been appointed to head of ALN and inclusion is very skilled in data analysis. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes.
Yes, and just following on from what Jill said, you know, we've been analysing this data for many years, and we, you know, one of our deputy heads is very good at data analysis, and you know, we're happy to support wherever needed with all of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any comments?
Chair, sorry, I had a question. It has been touched on greatly in the presentation, but on the same sheet that you were, the statutory duties maintain schools, it says to decide whether a child has ALN. Can we go that roughly that process?
So if I go through what I talked to you before, what we have to decide is whether we are able to meet a child's needs with our universal provision. And our universal provision is the everyday teaching and learning, quality teaching and learning that goes on in that classroom. Now, the majority of children would access their learning and be able to move forward and make progress with good quality teaching and learning. There will be some children who will need interventions, catch up, help with their reading, help with their maths. But we have to decide, is that an additional learning need, or is that part of our everyday universal provision in the classroom? And the majority of interventions in schools that schools provide, for example, some schools with some children with emotional problems may access ELSA. We would not class that as an additional learning need, Howard. We would class that as universal provision. Someone, as I said about reading earlier, if someone is a little bit slow with their reading, having difficulties with their reading, would we immediately say that was an additional learning need? No, we wouldn't. We'd put in place a read, write, ink catch-up, a one-to-one session, and we would address it that way. So additional learning needs will be, is for children who have difficulties which are above and beyond that we cannot meet at universal provision. So we may need to then provide something that is in addition to what we provide as our normal everyday practice, and that is a child who would have additional learning needs.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Significantly different.
Yeah. And is that picked up initially by the teacher?
Yes, it would be. And then it would be discussed within the school. And that's where the role of the Elenco might be in advising and saying, right now, is this do you think this is? Because probably, you know what teachers are like in September, they get their new class. And I can, you know, I think quite a few teachers will say, oh, I don't know whether this one's got ALN. Well, no, it's probably about provision and whether or not that child is able to access their learning via the universal provision. It's where a child has got a barrier to learning, which you need to put something in place that is in addition to and different from your normal teaching and learning and a universal provision within the school.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions then?
Kath, did you want to ask something? Kath, you've got your hand up. No?
Oh, sorry. No.
No?
No.
If there are no further questions, once again, can I thank you, Jill and Rhiannon, for what was an excellent presentation, what was an excellent report, and I think, well, not think, I know I echo the sentiments of every member of this committee. It's one heck of a good report. So thank you both. And I hope it's not too long before you'll be coming back to report more positive stuff regarding the ALN. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on then to the next item, which is the review of education other than at school. That's the Yotis provision. Now, Sue, I'm depending on you here. The author of the report, obviously, is Sarah Bowen. I don't know whether Sarah's with us. No?
No, Sarah's not. Sarah doesn't work a Monday, so I'm taking this report. I'll bring in this report.
So over to you, Sue.
Okay, thank you, members. As promised, I think was last year, we would bring the review of education other than at school provision back to this committee for scrutinising. As you know, there's been a significant amount of work done with our PRUs. It's gone and it's had several different names and different venues and different guises over the number of years. But since 2018, September 2018, we have had a registered pupil referral unit known as Tydysgu in Merthyr Tydfil, originally set up for Key Stage 2 in Tydysgu Dowlais on the old infant site, and in the old T Humphrey site, the Key Stages 3 and 4. Since last September, that has increased to foundation phase and Key Stage 2 on the Tydysgu Dowlais site. At the same time as setting up the registered provision for the pupil referral unit, we entered into a service level agreement for our children who are on special tuition. Now, these children might be identified as needing special tuition for a number of reasons. It might be they're school phobic, they might need special tuition for medical reasons, they might actually need special tuition because they cannot cope with any sort of school provision at all, even a pupil referral unit. As a local authority, we only need to provide 1 hour, statutorily provide 1 hour a day for foundation phase, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. And apologies, there's a mistake under 3.4. That should say foundation phase and not Key Stage 1. For Key Stage 4, we provide 2 hours a day of special tuition. And in cases of children being permanently excluded, of which we currently have 3 in the local authority, we need to offer 25 hours a week. It is very difficult to get these children to engage in 25 hours a week. A number of them have actually been excluded not attending school, if you say that they cannot cope with mainstream, their behaviour has been such that they've been permanently excluded from a mainstream setting, to provide 25 hours a week is very difficult to get them engaged. But we do work with the pupil and the family to ensure that that bespoke package can be provided to meet the needs of the children, and we monitor that very carefully. We are currently developing the Tydysgu Dowlais site to be more effective. We were doing this prior to the pandemic, so we have actually refurbished the bungalow on the Tydysgu Dowlais site, which was to be for the special tuition, but obviously with the social distancing, we can only get about 2 or 3 children in there at once, because we were hoping to get groups of children in there, which then encourages those children on special tuition to start engaging with their peers. But we will work on it, and hopefully as social distancing restrictions are lifted, we can get more and more children in there. There's an interesting dynamic, I suppose, at Tydysgu. All the pupils in Tydysgu foundation phase, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 are male. We do have a number of girls on special tuition, but at the moment we have no girls in attending our PRU. There's some success since we've registered the PRU as a school. We've also registered it as an examination centre. These pupils do remain as a dual role with their home school, because the intention is that they will return home, but they can sit examinations at Tydysgu, which was something that we didn't have previously. Tydysgu did enter learners for GCSE last November, prior to the stopping of examinations, and as you can see in 5.6, 5 out of the 7 have already achieved a pass. During the academic year 2019-20, there were 68 pupils, a high number, accessing special tuition. This has decreased. We believe this is due to the fact that as schools can deliver blended learning, they are able to deliver learning to all their pupils. And we are looking to see how this can be developed further next year, with the schools actually taking on possibly taking on some of the special tuitions themselves. The provisions have remained open since September, although attendance hasn't been particularly good, but the children have been back and forth. Placements are continually reviewed at the panel, and there are robust lines of communication, but I can see Jill is still on the call. I think she will agree that there needs to be more sort of conversation with the schools and with the provisions as to which children go and when. We have throughout this year and last year developed stronger links with outside agencies. Stevens and George Charitable Trust in particular have been particularly engaged with Tydysgu, and they've actually had children go into their own centre in Dowlais, and actually the lead officer for the Stevens and George Charitable Trust now sits on the management committee of Tydysgu. So there's a very strong relationship there. And for World Book Day, there were some excellent posters developed by those children. Where possible, we give the pupils have access to other sessions, therapeutic sessions, and that is something that we're very keen to actually develop further. There is an emphasis on developing positive social engagement. They're part of the Nurture Schools project, which we've spoken about in Scrutiny previously, and the aim is that they actually achieve the National Nurture Schools quality mark within the next 2 years. They're also participating in the Rights Respect in School Award, which again we've spoken about in Scrutiny, and the sites are aiming to achieve the Bronze Award, which again recognises the rights of the child, but also the responsibilities of the child. We've got a lot of work to do to ensure that our PRU is as successful as it should be. We have to ensure that we get better outcomes for the young children. Rhiannon spoke about previously how we've developed Greenfield as an outreach service for our LRBs. The long-term vision, we're not there yet, would be to develop Tydysgu as an outreach service to support behaviour management in our schools. But there's a long way to go there. We'd have to look at our own behaviour team and our school support team to be able to develop that. We also need to secure a more suitable setting for Tydysgu Humphrey. For those of you that know where it is on Alexander Road, it's not the best facility for those children, those Key Stage 3 and 4 learners. They need space. So we're looking at seeing how we can utilise the Tydysgu Dowlais site more fully, but recognising that we can't have foundation phase, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 pupils in close proximity with the type of difficulties that those children have. To start that outreach work, we need to develop stronger links with mainstream schools so that revolving door that we always wanted can be set up properly. We're already started work with Head of Children's Services, Taryn, to see how we can secure support for these learners, looking at some more therapeutic work. Mentioned about our children who are permanently excluded and looking at how we can engage now with alternative provisions. Amelia Farm, places in the Cynon Valley who actually do education in a different way, not sort of formal education, and looking how we can actually support those. Members on the panel will know that we've secured, or we've changed our funding and we've secured some growth to look at how we can sort of actually look at that support. We're working closely with Central South to develop Tydysgu more fully, and we want to develop it as one setting. At the moment, if you talk to people, they talk about Tydysgu Dowlais, they talk about Tydysgu Humphrey as separate entities. It is one provision, and we need to actually look at how we can develop it as a cohesive learning and cohesive unit. And also that special tuition, that Dysgu Newydd, we're going out to procurement at the moment. We need to secure that as a purposeful support mechanism for these children moving forward. For the last 2 years, it has shown that children on special tuition do get the qualifications that they deserve, and we need to ensure that that continues for those young people. Thank you very much, Chair. Open to questions.
Thank you very much, Sue, for that. Any questions from members? No? Hello. Sherelle?
Thank you. Thanks, Sue, for that. In terms of what's next, I said one of the actions was to develop a more robust package of support for learners who are permanently excluded. So yeah. Can you just tell me a bit more about that? What would that look like?
Right. Well, we've got to, if we've got a child permanently excluded, as I said earlier in the report, we're expected to provide 25 hours of education. But these children, these young people, struggle with 25 hours of education. Yeah. So it's looking at where else can we go? Can we use Amelia Farm for a day? Could we use, when COVID allows, the gym in Dowlais Community Centre? Could we look at different opportunities, different learning experiences for these young people that would engage them back in learning? There was the junior apprenticeship in the college that we were able to access, but then again, that was a structured learning environment, and the young people can't cope. So we've developed, Sarah's developed quite a good, and Councillor Davis, and I think Lisa has the leader has been involved in this, the Directory of Alternative Placements, and actually then engaging with those places to get a package for these young people. We've got military prep that we can use as well, but we really need to work with them. And the ultimate aim is to get them back into a school, because one of our permanently ex children is year 7. So, you know, it's a long, we've got to get the children back into some sort of education, but they need to engage in education, in learning activities before we can get them back into school.
Okay, fab, thank you. And my other question then was, in terms of the children that are in the PRU due to behavioural management issues of the children, what do we do then in terms of looking at the wider family links and looking at the environmental factors that are the triggers for these children? Do we provide more support around the family rather than just the focus on the child, or is it just that's our responsibility and we leave other partners
No.
do the... Do you know what I mean? I just wanted to have a little bit of an overview, really.
So that is one of the things that we're really trying to look at. And I will say, you know, I'm an ex-teacher myself. We tend to think of the schools doing all the solutions, but we can't, because they home to families. So it's looking at how we can engage with families. That's one of the conversations that we're having with Taryn in Children's Services. Most of these children, this is sad, you know, are known to social services. So what wraparound support can we actually give those? That's one of the things, that's one of the aims of developing Tŷ Dysgu Dawlais, that we would have family rooms, that we could engage with the families, we can bring the families in, talking about putting an adolescent social worker there. So you've got that whole wraparound activities that support the learners and the families moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Oh, that's good news, because, you know, for some families, unfortunately, I think, you know, you said that they're involved in social services, but maybe looking at the parental capacity to support their children in schools, and particularly where some of the report mentions there's like a dual contract, so it's half at home is the responsibility. And I just think for some children, perhaps they haven't got that opportunity at home, whether it's parental capacity or environmental factors, and then they're 50% let down already without the part of the education failing. Do you see what I mean? So it's really a difficult balance for these children to give them that start that everybody deserves, regardless of where you come from or who your family is, isn't it? You know?
This is why the settings remained open. They would have vulnerable learners, so the settings remained open. But if you're talking to the head teacher, certainly not so much in foundation phase and Key Stage 2, because they came to school, but in Key Stage 3 and 4, they saw their peers not in school, so they really struggled to get them in school.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, when we did the LFTs there, the one way Gail actually got them in to do the LFTs was to say, well, if you come in and do your LFT, you can actually we'll have a training day. We can give you some work to go home to work with. But if they didn't come in, they had to do the work. You know, so it was she's very good at dangling carrots and getting the children in, I must admit.
Fab. So. That's great. Thanks for that, Sue.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other questions?
Francis, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's just a quick one. Your previous answers have pretty much covered most of these points, but in 5.9, it on about the weekly attendance being 48.18. A lot of your previous discussions to the other questions have covered the vast majority of it. But how has the COVID situation impacted that attendance number? Has that been amended to, or is that just the hard attendance numbers? And well, the continuation was the plans to improve that, but you've covered the majority of that in the previous answers.
That was what their average attendance has been since September. It has been erratic. It is improving. It has improved since Easter. I know we've only been back 2 weeks, but that's seen a big improvement. What I will say, that's one of the better ones across the region. So whilst we are not happy with it, it's less than 50%. Across the region, it's one of the highest. So I think it's engaging with the families. It's ringing up. It's doing that first day response. It's bringing those children back in and saying, look, why aren't they in? They need to come in. They need to do this, and actually making the experience. This is why they've done so much work with Stevens and George Charitable Trust this year to actually give the children a hook to come into school, because they've been told that this is taking place. So they want to come in and they want to do those activities. I don't know if that answers your question, Francis.
Yeah, that's everything. You know, like I said, you covered the vast majority of it previously. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much, Sue, for that update. And we move on then to item number 5, which is the forward work programme.
Do you want me to stay, Harvey, now, or do you want to go?
No, I think so. As far as this item is concerned, I don't think it's going to take us too long, because we've come to the end of the, in inverted commas, the academic year. We finished the agenda. So it basically means that you, Saif, and myself have got to sit down and consider items for inclusion in the next forward work programme for 21-22, in order that we can bring them back to the committee. So, you know, I think that basically is the way forward that I would suggest from here on in.
What I would suggest, Councillor Jones, is we have that workshop in June on the accountability and evaluation framework that Betson has put in. As Betson suggested in our last meeting, could I make a request then that members consider that when we've done that workshop, we actually bring a further report to this scrutiny before the end of the summer term as to where we're moving forward with that accountability and evaluation, so you know what you're going to be scrutinising and what we can bring to you for performance measures next year. That's just a request from me before I go.
Yep, no problem at all.
Okay, I'll leave you now. Thank you very much.
Harvey, can I just jump in there? Sorry, I did have my hand up, but I'm not sure if you could see it. I've taken it down now. Is that okay? Just also to add and support that, if obviously on Wednesday I've got my strategic meeting with Cabinet to finalise our forward plan as well, ready for the next year. So we can give that to you then to support you a forward work plan, and any conversations that I can be involved in, I'd be readily available for you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as far as the forward work programme is concerned, if members were to go forward to page 41, today, the 26th of April, the two items are shown there that we've dealt with. And basically, we've come to the end of the year now. There are some additional items, but they will be considered when we consider other items to include in the next year's programme. So if members are happy with that, and certainly it has got to come back to the Scrutiny Committee for full approval. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that?
Yeah, fine.
Yep.
Okay. On to item 6, scrutiny referrals. Saif, anything come forward?
No, nothing, Chair.
Item number 7, reflection and evaluation of the meeting. Well, I always leave that open to members. Straightforward, as I see it, the report on ALN, it was, to me, outstanding. There's a lot of work gone into it. And really, it's centering on those children that really need to be identified as in need of additional learning, and it also falls into the new agenda that is due out, and there's nothing but good that is coming out of it as far as I'm concerned. It'll be interesting to see how the parents react to it, because obviously there's a statutory duty on the schools now to bring it to the attention of the parents and the children. So, you know, that is a piece of work when it takes place. It's going to be very interesting to see how it transpires. So, any other business deemed urgent for myself? I got no urgent business to bring up. So, once again, I thank you all for attending. And it's now 17:22. I declare the meeting closed.
Fab. Thank you. And apologies for my lateness, Harvey. I was stuck in another meeting.
No problem. No problem.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Good on, everyone.
Ta-ra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.